Look at your neighbor and tell them, this message is not for my comfort, it's for my correction. Because I didn't come to pat you on the back today, I came to pull you out of hiding. I didn't come to motivate your feelings, I came to activate your discipline. Hear me clearly, you don't lack talent. You don't lack vision. You don't lack anointing. What you lack is execution. We've mastered the art of explaining why we didn't do it. We spiritualize procrastination. We justify delay. We dress fear up and call it waiting on the right time. But the truth is, the clock is not your enemy. Your excuses are. You keep saying one day, but destiny responds to today. You keep asking God for another chance, while God is asking you for another level of obedience. This is the season where grace gives you strength, but discipline gets it done. No more stories. No more explanations. No more escape routes. If it matters, do it. If it's in your hands, handle it. If God showed it to you, move on it. Tell yourself out loud, no excuses. Get it done. Excuses are comfortable because they protect us from confrontation. Confrontation with our own inconsistency, our own fear, our own unfinished obedience. An excuse sounds intelligent, even responsible, but it quietly gives permission to stay exactly where you are. It doesn't announce itself as surrender. It presents itself as logic. That's why stagnation feels safe. You can stay still and still sound reasonable. You can remain stuck and still feel justified. But hear this truth clearly. Every excuse you entertain is a future you delay. You are not just explaining your situation, you are extending it. Excuses become dangerous because they repeat. What you say once becomes what you believe. What you believe becomes how you live. At first, you say you'll do it tomorrow because today is busy. Then tomorrow comes and you say the timing isn't right. Then timing becomes the God you worship, and progress becomes the sacrifice you never make. Stagnation doesn't arrive suddenly. It settles in slowly, one excuse at a time, until you look up and realize years have passed and nothing has changed except your ability to explain why. The tragedy is not that people fail. The tragedy is that they settle. Failure can teach you. Delay can mature you, but excuses paralyze you. They numb the urgency of purpose. They quiet the voice that says, you know you could do more. They silence conviction and replace it with comfort. And comfort will keep you broke in places money can't fix, broke in discipline, broke in confidence, broken momentum. Every time an excuse shows up, it asks one question: will you protect your ego or pursue your growth? Because excuses exist to protect image. They keep you from looking foolish, from risking rejection, from confronting the possibility that you might try and still struggle. But growth doesn't happen in protection. It happens in exposure. It happens when you step out with trembling hands and say, I don't have it all figured out, but I refuse to stay here. You cannot move forward while rehearsing reasons to stay behind. At some point, explanation becomes rebellion, not against people, but against your own potential. You already know what needs to be done. You don't need another confirmation, another sign, another conversation. What you need is courage to cut off the dialogue you keep having with delay. The moment you stop negotiating with your excuses is the moment momentum is born. Greatness does not respond to sympathy, it responds to action. Destiny does not reward intention, it honors execution. The world is not changed by those who could have, should have, or meant to. It is changed by those who decided to move even when it was uncomfortable. When excuses die, responsibility rises. And when responsibility rises, stagnation has no choice but to break. Discipline is not loud. It doesn't announce itself with goosebumps or dramatic moments. Discipline shows up quietly, consistently, when nobody is watching and nobody is clapping. Motivation will make you feel ready, but discipline will make you effective. Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls with mood, energy, and circumstances. Discipline is a decision. It says, I will do this whether I feel like it or not. And that decision is what separates people who dream from people who deliver. The danger of depending on motivation is that it trains you to wait on a feeling before you move. You start believing progress requires inspiration, when in truth, progress requires obedience to routine. There are days you will wake up tired, distracted, unexcited, even discouraged. Those days are not a sign to stop. They are an invitation to mature. Discipline steps in where motivation steps out. It carries the assignment when your emotions refuse to cooperate. Discipline is the bridge between what you say you want and what you are willing to do daily to get it. You can pray for change, visualize success, and speak positively all you want, but without disciplined action, nothing shifts. Results are not attracted to desire. They are attracted to consistency. The reason discipline works is because it compounds. One small act done faithfully will eventually outweigh one big act done occasionally. You don't win by intensity, you win by endurance. There is something powerful that happens when you keep showing up. You begin to trust yourself again. Confidence is rebuilt, not by hype, but by evidence. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when it's uncomfortable, you deposit integrity into your own spirit. Over time, that integrity becomes authority. You stop needing external validation because your habits are validating you from the inside. Discipline also teaches you how to govern your life instead of reacting to it. When you are undisciplined, your schedule controls you. Your emotions control you. Your circumstances control you. But discipline gives you command. It trains your mind to lead your body instead of your body leading your mind. That's when growth accelerates. When you stop asking how you feel and start asking what the assignment requires. Understand this. Discipline is not punishment. It is preparation. It is not about restriction. It is about alignment. It aligns your daily actions with your long-term vision. It keeps you moving forward when progress feels slow and results are invisible. And when motivation finally returns, and it will, it finds you already in motion. That is why discipline will take you places motivation never could. Motivation might start the journey, but discipline finishes it. Motivation excites you at the beginning, but discipline sustains you through the middle. And the middle is where most people quit. If you learn to move without the mood, to work without the wave of emotion, to act without applause, you will outgrow environments that once intimidated you. Discipline doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you become. Delay often wears a respectable suit. It sounds wise, cautious, even spiritual. You tell yourself you're being patient, that you're waiting for clarity, waiting for confirmation, waiting for the right conditions. But many times what we call waiting is really fear asking for permission to stay in control. Fear doesn't usually scream, it whispers. It says, not yet. It says, what if it doesn't work? It says, you should prepare a little more. And while you're listening, opportunity keeps moving. Fear is clever because it rarely admits its name. It disguises itself as responsibility, as perfectionism, as overthinking. You convince yourself you need one more plan, one more sign, one more guarantee before you move. But guarantees are not how growth works. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move while fear is still talking. Delay becomes dangerous when it feels productive because it gives you the illusion of progress without the risk of action. Every assignment you avoid begins to grow in your imagination. The longer you delay it, the heavier it feels. What could have been handled in a moment starts to look overwhelming simply because you've been circling it instead of confronting it. Fear feeds on postponement. Each delay reinforces the lie that you're not ready, that you're not capable, that now is not the time. But readiness is not something you wait for. It's something you step into. There is a cost to delay that most people don't calculate. While you're waiting, confidence erodes, momentum slows, passion dulls. The fire you once had begins to flicker, not because the vision was wrong, but because inactivity starved it of oxygen. Movement fuels belief. Action strengthens faith. When you stop moving, doubt gets louder because there is no evidence contradicting it. Delay also trains your mind to obey fear. Each time you hesitate, fear gains authority. It learns that if it makes enough noise, you'll stop. But the moment you act imperfectly, nervously, without full clarity, you break that authority. Fear doesn't disappear, but it loses its power to command you. You realize you are stronger than the voice trying to slow you down. Most breakthroughs are on the other side of a decision you've been postponing. Not because the decision is perfect, but because movement invites correction. You can adjust direction while you're moving, but you cannot steer what refuses to start. The biggest mistake is not moving and being wrong. It's staying still and calling it wisdom. The truth is, you already know what the next step is. It's the one that makes your heart race a little. It's the one that stretches you. It's the one you keep pushing to tomorrow. That's not coincidence. That's fear revealing itself. And the only way to silence it is to move anyway. When you step forward, even with shaking hands, fear loses its disguise and courage finally gets the microphone. What you avoid does not stay neutral. It grows. It gains weight. It gains influence. The very thing you keep pushing aside, postponing, or pretending isn't urgent begins to occupy space in your mind and drain energy from your spirit. Avoidance feels like relief in the moment, but it quietly hands control to the problem you refuse to face. You think you're escaping pressure, but in reality, you're feeding it. Every avoided responsibility becomes a silent source of stress. Even when you're resting, it's there. Even when you're smiling, it's there. It shows up as anxiety, irritability, distraction. You can't fully enjoy progress in one area because another area is demanding attention you keep denying. Avoidance fragments your focus. It pulls your confidence apart in pieces because deep down, you know there's something undone that has your name on it. The longer you avoid something, the more power it has over your emotions. A simple task becomes a mental giant. A necessary conversation becomes a dreaded confrontation. A small decision turns into a paralyzing dilemma. Not because it's truly that big, but because your mind has been rehearsing fear instead of resolution. Avoidance gives imagination free rein, and imagination without action almost always leans toward the worst-case scenario. There is also a quiet erosion that happens when avoidance becomes a habit. You begin to doubt yourself. Not publicly, but privately. You question your own reliability. You start wondering if you can trust yourself to follow through. That internal doubt is more damaging than external criticism because it shapes how boldly you step into new opportunities. When you don't confront what you avoid, you slowly shrink your sense of capability. Avoidance doesn't just affect the task, it affects your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who delays, someone who dodges discomfort, someone who handles things later. And whatever identity you accept, your behavior will work hard to defend. That's how cycles form. You avoid, feel guilty, delay more, then normalize the pattern. Before you know it, the very thing you fear becomes the thing that governs you. But the moment you face what you've been avoiding, something breaks. The tension lifts, the fear shrinks. You realize the power was never in the task. It was in your hesitation. Confrontation brings clarity. Action restores authority. When you handle what you've been dodging, you don't just solve a problem, you reclaim leadership over your own life. Avoidance thrives in the dark, but courage turns on the light. And when the light comes on, you see that what once intimidated you is manageable. Not easy, not always comfortable, but manageable. Facing what you avoid is not about being fearless. It's about refusing to be controlled. The moment you stop running, the chase ends. And when the chase ends, confidence returns because you are no longer being led by what you fear. You are leading yourself forward. Obedience is rarely dramatic. It doesn't always come with a crowd, a spotlight, or instant results. Most of the time, Obedience is quiet agreement with a simple instruction you'd rather overlook. It is the decision to act on what you already know, not what you hope to discover later. Momentum is born in those small moments when you move without needing full understanding. You don't need the whole map when you're only required to take the next step. Many people stall because they are waiting for certainty. They want assurance that the effort will pay off, that the path will be smooth, that the outcome will justify the risk. But obedience doesn't negotiate with outcomes. It responds to direction. When you obey what's in front of you, clarity begins to unfold as you move. Stillness does not produce insight. Motion does. The reason the path feels unclear is not because the vision is wrong, but because vision sharpens through obedience. Momentum does not come from thinking harder. It comes from moving sooner. The first step may feel small, even insignificant, but it carries a hidden force. Once you move, resistance changes. Doors shift. Opportunities reveal themselves. You begin to notice resources, people, and ideas that were invisible when you were standing still. Obedience activates awareness. It tunes your attention to what supports forward motion instead of what threatens it. There is also a strengthening that happens through obedience. Each time you follow through, you reinforce trust within yourself. You begin to believe that when you sense direction, you will respond. That internal trust is powerful. It creates consistency. And consistency creates speed. Not hurried speed, but sustained momentum that carries you farther than bursts of enthusiasm ever could. Disobedience, on the other hand, always costs more than it saves. It promises comfort but delivers confusion. When you ignore the next step, you don't stay neutral, you fall behind. The hesitation compounds. The simple becomes complicated. What could have been handled early now requires extra effort, extra energy, and extra recovery. Obedience may feel demanding, but delay is exhausting. Momentum thrives on responsiveness. The faster you respond to what's required, the less energy you waste wrestling with indecision. Obedience streamlines your life. It removes unnecessary friction. It aligns your actions with your purpose, allowing progress to feel natural rather than forced. When your actions are aligned, movement becomes easier, not because the work disappears, but because resistance no longer comes from within. What you obey today prepares you for what you'll be trusted with tomorrow. Momentum is not random. It is the reward of alignment. When you take the step you know you should take, you signal readiness for the next one. And each step builds on the last, creating a rhythm of forward motion that is hard to stop. You don't need a louder voice or a clearer sign. You need a willing response. Obedience unlocks momentum because it turns intention into action. And once action begins, progress has a way of accelerating, carrying you beyond what you thought possible when you were still standing at the starting line. Belief that never moves is only an idea, not faith. You can say you believe all day long, but belief proves itself through action. Execution is where conviction leaves the mouth and enters reality. It's easy to agree with truth when it costs nothing, but belief is tested when it demands movement, risk, and responsibility. When you act, you put weight on what you say you believe. Without action, belief remains theoretical, safe, and unchallenged. Execution exposes what you truly trust. If you say you believe in growth but refuse to change your habits, your behavior tells the real story. If you say you believe in opportunity but avoid preparation, execution reveals the gap. Action removes ambiguity. It clarifies whether your belief is strong enough to carry inconvenience. That's why execution is uncomfortable. It forces alignment between confession and conduct. There is a difference between admiration and belief. You can admire principles, teachings, and visions without ever committing to them. Execution is commitment in motion. It's the moment you stop observing and start participating, and participation carries risk. You might fail. You might be misunderstood. You might struggle. But those risks are not signs of weak belief. They are the evidence that belief is alive. Dead faith never risks anything. Execution also builds belief. Many people think belief must come first, fully formed, before they act. But often, action precedes confidence. You move, and belief catches up. You step out uncertain, and certainty grows through experience. Each executed step becomes proof that you can handle more than you thought. Faith strengthens through movement, not contemplation. When you execute, you invite accountability. Now your belief is visible. It can be evaluated, challenged, and refined. That vulnerability is necessary for growth. Hidden belief never matures. It stays fragile because it's never tested. Execution hardens belief, giving it resilience. You learn not just what you believe, but why you believe it, because you've seen it work under pressure. Execution separates intention from impact. The world is full of well-meaning people whose lives never change because meaning without movement produces nothing. Impact requires follow-through. It requires consistency. It requires the willingness to show up again after disappointment. That repetition is where belief becomes unshakable. You stop relying on emotion and start relying on evidence built by your own obedience and effort. There is also authority that comes with execution. When you act on what you believe, you speak with credibility. Your words carry weight because they are backed by experience. Execution turns belief into testimony, not a story of perfection, but a story of persistence. You don't just say it works, you know it works because you've lived it. In the end, execution is belief in motion. It is faith with hands and feet. And when you move on what you believe, even imperfectly, you align yourself with progress. You show that your belief is not decorative, it is functional, and functional belief changes lives, starting with your own. Hear me, this is the moment where excuses lose their voice and action takes the microphone. You've heard enough, felt enough, waited enough. What you do next will testify louder than anything you just agreed with. Don't clap your way out of conviction. Don't shout and stay the same. When you leave this place, let your feet preach what your mouth just confessed. Today, comfort ends and commitment begins. This is not the season of almost, nearly, or someday. This is the hour of now. Stand up in your spirit, square your shoulders, and declare it with your life. No excuses, get it done.